We're live.
It's saying waiting.
But we're live.
Okay. So
Wait a minute.
I'm not seeing it on the screen though. That's the only thing I'm waiting for the. Aquí estamos. Yes. Oh, it says an error occurred. Please try again later. Déjame ver.
I mean, basically it's live. We're on 21 seconds of being live.
Here we are. I see us.
Okay. Where are they?
So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Mónica Leal, co-host and co-founder of Entre Dos, a podcast about raising bilingual children. I am joined by my co-host and co-founder, Paula Niño, and Alexis Rujinis, co-founder of Veo Leo, a company dedicated to creating Spanish Latinx content that celebrates Latin American culture and heritage. Today's chat is the first in a series of virtual chats called Brújula. This series is a joint effort by Veo Leo and Entre Dos podcast to help families navigate life at home during the quarantine. Our chat today is centered around children and the impact that the new social distancing guidelines might have on them. Today we're discussing Cómo están los niños? How are the children? And joining us is Andrea Vargas, a licensed mental health counselor and play therapist that specializes in child and adolescent counseling. Welcome, Andrea. And please feel free to send your questions for Andrea using the chat box to the left of your screen. We'll be saving time at the end to address them. And let's get started. So this is sort of a bit of a general question, but it's really crucial right now. And it's about what is the best way to talk about the virus in general. And of course, this depends on the age of your child. So if you could talk a little bit also about sort of those different age ranges and how the way that you could address this would vary depending on that.
Okay. So with kids, I think even in the different age ranges, there is every child is different, and I think as a mom, you know your child and you pretty much engage what is might be too much or might be too little. But I would say I would recommend asking the child, what do you know about the coronavirus, or what do you know about what's happening? And then you can start from there, because we might sometimes assume that they understand or assume that they don't understand, and then it might confuse them or leave them with unanswered questions, right? So I would just say check in with them and see what they already know.
Right. So it's a little bit about it's more of an ongoing conversation then, right? And doing more listening than talking, which is important. And sort of as a follow-up in terms of the confinement, we are trying to make our children feel as normal as possible, right? So they call this, the new normal. But how do you accommodate this situation without completely normalizing it? Because there are some things that we're doing that are a little strange. And how do, after this is done and we've come out of this, like how do we sort of, the hope is to readapt to how things maybe not used to be, but being outside and interacting more with humans.
Right. I think it's important to be honest though with our kids, because we shouldn't lie to them, because then kids can feel, especially with parents, they can feel, when we're stressed out or when we're worried, and they're really really smart, and they can pick up things around the house. Why? Maybe if not everybody's home usually at the same time, and they're starting to see that a lot. So is this an extended weekend? Like, what is going on? How come I can't go see my friends, or why are we going outside? So I think we have to be honest with them, and then always assure them that we are doing what we know is going to help them feel safe. And if we also can add, depending on the age, what everyone else is doing to keep them safe. So the schools are closed because the schools want to make sure kids are safe, right? The stores are making sure everybody wears a mask because we don't want to spread the germs. So it kind of giving them information on what all the adults around them are doing to keep them safe, that would help. Nothing's gonna do a miracle or anything because everybody is stressed out, and then just normalizing being stressed. Sometimes mommy's not going to have as much patience, or mommy's going to be extra tired, or mommy needs to do this while you are doing something else, and I really need you to be quiet if mom is working, or things like that. But always assure them that everyone's trying to do their best to keep them safe.
Right. And in thinking about sort of normalization and living in this new sort of temporary environment, um, we Paula and I have school age children, right? And there are also children that go to daycare, and a lot of particularly young children were just learning how to negotiate this independence outside of the home.
Mhm.
And for some children, it takes a really long time. And they might have been just settling in to, their new routine and making friends, and just being independent and resolving issues on their own. And these are really important life tools. And that was just stopped cold in many ways.
Mhm.
Um, how can we continue building on these skills at home?
It's tricky, and I think if we talk about this as a new normal, it really, at the end of the day, it's really not, right? There's nothing normal about the situation that we're in.
Right.
There's nothing normal about not being able to hug your friend or go play with your friend. So it is hard, and my heart really feels for the little ones, that this is going to impact them so much, because like you said, and or even toddlers who were learning to potty train and stuff like this, all of this causes kids to sometimes regress. But there's nothing that we can do um to kind of fast forward through all of this. We just, as a parent, I think the best thing we can do is take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves, because we're not going to be always on our best, right? Because we have so many things going on. And I think if we focus on connecting with our child and trying to be present with our child, and we are building resilience to a crisis situation, trying to keep the predictability as much as we can at home, with routine, but nothing too strict or nothing too rigid. I just tried something new this week, and because the other stuff I was trying wasn't working. So just kind of going with the flow, and maybe acknowledging that for your kids. Look, we're trying to figure this out, and checking in with them. Of course, like the little ones, the more predictability you can give them throughout the day, that'll give them a sense of safety, because that's what we want to instill in our kids at this time that is such an unsure, uncertain situation. Is mommy and daddy are going to take care of you. We're really doing our best to keep you safe. And then that's like the foundation of everything. And once they feel like that, then when everything goes back to normal, whatever that's going to look like, they're going to be um, better prepared, I think, to adjust to that, because they've felt connected and safe and taken care of.
Right. And sort of going a step forward from that, for children, this might be the first time experiencing this sort of, uncertainty, which can create fear and anxiety, and in some instances grief, right? And how do these manifest in children, these emotions, right?
Mhm.
And what kind of behaviors should we be looking out for in terms of, if maybe we need to seek help, or even just maybe us helping them navigate these emotions?
Okay, so with kids, they might present with like irritability or trouble sleeping, or maybe changes in their eating habits. They might be more like easily frustrated and might have like outbursts. And these are all a normal response to the situation that we're in, because we are in a crisis situation. Obviously every family has it's being affected in a different way. But when I work with kids, I work very closely with the parents, because I might see them in session for an hour maybe, but there's if I do not work with their home environment, with their parents, then it's going to make it very challenging for the child to make a lot of changes. So as a parent, I think, like always, the spotlight is on you. How are you handling this? If you are reaching out to your support system, whatever that is it your friends? Is it, your family? Are you able to go for a walk on your own safely, to kind of just take a break from the stress that is? You are better equipped to handling those outbursts, or understanding that your child might be anxious, and you're going to know how to calm them because you're calm. But if you're upset and you're stressed out and you're worried and you're on the verge of tears, you're not, I mean, first, kids are going to feel that, and then you're not going to be in the right emotional state to really console your child or support them through this.
Right. And this is also kind of a related question that extends into managing emotions, and this is more about sort of discipline. Those strategies that we might have been using prior to this would we've had to change them, right? Because we are at home all day. So the constructs that we had before, right, and the structure that we had before, they're not there anymore. So the way that discipline has to happen, and we've been at my home, we have been more lenient, right? Because we're letting we're all very emotional. There's ups and downs on a daily basis. This is not normally how we run our house. Mm-hmm. So how do you recommend discipline? And of course, this is on a child to child basis, but in general, how would you recommend we continue to be, disciplining our children? Because you don't want to lose the work that you have been, doing, right? And the accomplishments that you have sort of reached with kids because of this, right? So how would you address that?
I think when it comes to discipline, I guess it depends on what you normally would discipline for. Like, when you say discipline, are we talking about the child not being able to follow the daily schedule that you already had, or maybe a little bit more sassiness, or
that too, all of it.
of things that they, so if we think about those behaviors, then we have to take a step back and understand so kids in general do not have many choices in their life, right? They're being told where to go, what to do, what to eat, when to eat. They don't really have that many choices. And then we are in a situation where now we even have less choices, because no, they can't go outside and play with their neighbor. They right. can't. They can't go to school and have a break from being at home with all of this, right? So I guess you have to take a step back and, like you said, be a little more lenient, but understanding what are some of the deal breakers and what are some of the things that I can negotiate, and be a little bit more flexible about. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and how kids want to sometimes wear like the craziest outfits. Well, this is a time, we're not going anywhere. Wear your crazy outfit. If we can be flexible with them and give them a sense of choice in certain things, I can almost guarantee that they're going to be easier to manage, because then they don't feel as constricted and as controlled, really, because I mean, if we as adults feel very frustrated right now because we can't do certain things, and then let's say we have, or some of us already have, our boss that's on top of us and telling us more
Right.
things, and you have to do this. It's almost like, okay, but you're not taking into consideration that I'm working from home with kids running around, and so what are you going to do? You're going to become resentful. You're not going to want to do your work. You're going to start maybe even looking for another job, like an out, like I can't do this, so the same thing with kids. So we are in essence the CEOs of the family, right? And we have to understand that they're going to be stressed out, and be more flexible when possible. So, and I think all of that, you understanding that about your child is going to draw you closer to your child, and they're going to feel that connection. And when kids feel connected, and again, I'll say it again, safe, then it's so much easier, because they're not in that hyper aroused state where they're like, you know everybody's asking me to do this, and no, and I can't even have the cookie that I wanted. I mean, you can't have 20 cookies, but you can have an extra cookie, right? So
Yeah, you can have a cookie. It's okay. Or
yeah,
3.
right, right.
Yeah, and it's what are your thoughts on um schools and schoolwork and what can be accomplished? And I'm already seeing your face here. But because it's I'm not experiencing a lot of pressure from my daughter's in kindergarten, so it's not, but I know that other children, older children, are experiencing a very high pressure environment that's being created by the schools, and it's at home, they feel a lot of pressure to perform. And how can parents help children through this?
Okay, so really quick, I do not understand why they're doing this. We are in a crisis situation, parents are stressed, kids are stressed, and now we're asking children to sit and focus without getting human in person contact, right? So we're basically asking these kids to do something that's almost neurobiologically impossible. I mean, there's some kids that maybe handle it a little bit better, but how much learning can you really do when you're in a high stress situation?
Right.
You just can't. So, but then we're left with really no choice. So validating that for them. I mean, I sit with my kid almost every day in the morning, and he has a fit every day in the morning, and I tell him the same thing. I wish I can do something about this. I wish we didn't have to do this. Or I wish maybe they could let us do it how we would want it, and not necessarily all these requirements that they have us do and assignments. But there's nothing we can do. And I'm sorry for that. And then, we'll cry, we'll hug, take a break, and I'm going to support you through this, as hard as this is, because again, we're striving for them to feel supported by you. If they're not feeling supported by the school, then we have to step it up even more. I get it. This must be really hard for you, and I will do my best to help you as much as I can. And just think about that. Imagine you working, and your boss is pressuring you to do all these things, and somebody that you care about acknowledges that and validates that. You're like, oh, is it going to change it? No, you still have to do it, but at least you get some of that validation, and you're like, all right, and then you'll figure it out.
That's very good advice, and I mean, it is the one thing that we can do to support them. I mean, with my daughter, that has helped. I've also have given her a lot of freedom in terms of how she wants to structure her day. So I give her, these are the things that you need to do. You can pick when you want to do them. So if you want to play in the morning, you can do that. If you want to eat a paleta while you do your eye ready, you can do that too. And then sort of like give her that freedom that she might not have had in school.
Right.
And maybe help her with that. But it's still, I mean, it's so difficult. And I think the expectations that we have on children, even when school was in session, are sometimes unrealistic.
Yes.
Um, so and this is one final question before we go into the audience questions, but how do we help a child process that a family member or someone that was really close to the family, right, that has passed away, if we can't have the sort of traditional sort of rituals, right, that we use to
Mhm.
grieve and provide closure, um, how would you suggest we navigate that?
I think it depends on your religious beliefs, right? But and also it depends on what the child already knows about death, right? The experts on grief and children always recommend being very almost like to the point and factual, because in and especially now that there's so many uncertain feelings, right? If we tell a child, oh, an angel took, I don't know, your tia or somebody away, that's already hard enough for a child to understand, and especially in this situation. So I guess we can start from there, just maybe talking about what death is. There's so many different books, there's so many YouTube videos that you can use. And then if we think about, for the most part, when we talk about the body being the the one that we can't see anymore, we can't feel anymore, then we might want to focus on maybe so and so's memory. And if we can talk about maybe times you spent with him or her, or maybe even doing like a memory box, and if it helps to bury it, or have some type of memorial at home, or something to help them process that, right? And again, like you had mentioned with one of the questions before, this is an ongoing conversation because kids need some time for their little brains to come to figure out what that all means. And then maybe planning, I don't know how that's, honestly don't know how that's going to be, if at some point you are going to be able to visit them at the cemetery, or whatever that is.
That's yeah, that's kind of it's sad to think about, but it's sort of like the new reality for many people, and we really appreciate that, you're giving such great advice. We hope that no one in our audience will need it, but it is something that, it's a reality of this sort of this crisis.
Mhm.
um so right now we are going to move into audience questions, which we have a few queued up. Paula, do you want to ask the first one?
Sure. So the first question is from a parent who has a 2.5-year-old. And the question is, what's the right age or the right time to talk about the things going on in the world? Should we bring it up with our children or wait for them to bring it up to us?
Okay, so at 2.5, I would probably recommend using play, right? So because they probably can understand that a little bit better. So maybe you want to um, take some of their stuffed animals, and maybe if they already know about germs, which I don't think at 2.5, so maybe so and so has coronavirus, or so and so has a virus, and maybe you can pretend that the stuffed animal is coughing, and then that the other ones are like hiding from them, or something, so that they're like, oh, okay. And maybe you want to put a family of little bears in a house, and another family of little, I don't know, I'm thinking of my daughter's room right now, unicorns on one side, and how everybody had to stay safe until it was safe to go outside back in the forest, or something like a story, or something to their level, so that it can kind of understand a little bit. I mean, they're 2.5. So, and then just talk about it's not safe to go out yet, but it will be, or the importance of washing our hands to make sure we don't have any germs. But again, it just really depends on 2.5. My two kids were totally different too at that age. So what I probably would have done with one would have worked. I probably wouldn't have done much with the other one, because he probably wouldn't have understood. So I think it just depends also.
Great, thank you. The other question is from a mom of a 3-year-old, and she says that her 3-year-old is having a hard time going to bed. He doesn't want us to leave him. How can we help him?
Okay, so that's one of the things that I had mentioned because again, kids are feeling like their world is totally upside down. So they are feeling scared. And what do kids want when they're scared? They want their mommy and they want their daddy, right? So this is a totally normal reaction. The child at that age is not going to sit and explain to you, well, mom and dad, because there's a coronavirus out there. I'm really scared and I really want to be close to you. They're not going to say that, so they're going to be crying or clingy at bedtime. So if you can, maybe meeting their need by, I don't know, if you want to put their toddler bed in your room and maybe not necessarily put them in your bed if that's not what you feel comfortable with, but meeting that need. I mean, as a little 3-year-old, if what makes you feel safe is being close to your mom and dad at night, I mean, do we deny that for them? Are we really going to worry about, okay, so how am I going to wean him off that? Okay, we'll get there. And that's a totally different problem to have, right? Or to address later on. So right now, try and meet your child's need. What is he telling you? He's scared. So, and we're all scared, right? Don't you wish you can go and crawl in bed with your mom and dad? Like, this is scary. So,
Yes. I'll say
yeah.
that my daughter is almost 8 and she's been sleeping with me. And the other day she was trying to build like a canopy over the bed and she couldn't. I mean, her system didn't work because the blanket fell on her face. And the next day she insisted so much that we built a canopy that I grabbed a sheet, we tied it. I mean, we did the setup and we tied it above my bed. And she said, "Oh, good, now I'm gonna sleep well." And I thought, where did this come from? Like, why is this sheet over the bed? But I guess it was some expression of that, whatever it is she's feeling that she can't express. And she's a lot older than,
Mhm.
3. So, but the next question, actually, you kind of touched on it a little bit about how a 3-year-old is not old enough to express discomfort yet. So the question is, how much do we suggest? Like, I suppose, do we help the child verbalize what they might be feeling by asking questions or suggesting? What would you say?
Well, I would say that the child is expressing what they feel, but they're not expressing it verbally like
Right.
we're used to. So look for cues in the child's behavior, um, because that's how they communicate, or that's the only way they know how to show you, right? If we think about an infant is hungry, doesn't sit up, walk over to the kitchen and say, hey, I'm hungry, can you make my bottle now? They're just crying, right? And then when they get a little bit older, they might move around and they might say things or they might have words, but they still don't have that cognitive ability. So again, with the I mean, maybe because I'm a play therapist, that's like where I go, but setting something up or for them with toys to explain what is happening and why they can't go outside, but always give them hope that they will be able to go outside. So maybe the little bear can poke his head out the cave and say, is it safe yet? Oh no, we gotta go back. Okay, we and things that they can do in the cave to make it fun, and then make them see it. Oh, okay, so one day it is going to be safe and we're all going to go outside and all the animals, kind of give them hope. Like we almost do it to ourselves when we sit there and fantasize, oh, can't wait to go get my nails done, or I can't wait to do this. So talking about what we're going to do in the meantime to stay safe and what we can look forward to at some point. um, so also I think Sesame Street is doing a lot of really cool stuff online, and a 3-year-old will probably see that. And again, if mommy's doing this with you and then you see it on Sesame Street, eventually they'll start getting it, right? And then
Yeah.
checking with them.
Yeah, that's great advice. The next one is actually shifting gears a little bit. So there's somebody asked about teens. How do teens experience these types of situations differently? And how do we help them? And how do they express this? Do they retreat? Teens tend to be a little melancholic so sometimes. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, teens, let's just take a moment and appreciate teenagers right now. My goodness, if it's hard for little ones, but little ones like to spend time with our
Yeah.
with us, and they like to cuddle and do all those things, right? The teenagers are in that phase where the last place they want to be, or they act like they want to be, is home. They want to be with their friends. They want to, go out. They want to go to the movies, and we have to restrict them, to staying home. So, first of all, again, like with the little ones and with ourselves, acknowledging for them, man, this must be hard. I can think back when I was 15. I don't want to be home with my annoying brother and this and that. And so for the ones that are missing their prom, I mean, and validating that for them. If we there, and it's funny because I heard something about how when we would hear our parents say, "Oh, I used to walk 4 miles in the snow to go to school. You have nothing to complain about," right? But now when we think about our teenagers as parents, when they ground their child or whatever, and the child will be, "What am I gonna do for this weekend?" It's like, we were in quarantine for 2 months. You're gonna be just fine. And Joe, the kind of, that's like in a way of validating for them how hard it is, how much you admire them for whatever they're doing to cope with this right now. And again, also being flexible with them. I know a lot of the concerns is, how much time is my kid going to be on the phone or this, and it's like, really, I mean, that's the way they're connecting, and that's what's so important for them right now. So thank goodness for social media. I don't think I would ever feel like I could say that, but thank goodness for technology now, because that's the one thing that's helping us feel connected. And with them, they're going to be same thing, irritable, maybe uh even maybe more melancholy, right? Sad, it's the end of the world. And now, can we really argue how far-fetched that is? It's not the end of the world, but it's pretty close to anything we could possibly have ever imagined, right? And being patient with them. And then this was also the best opportunity to figure out how we can get closer to our teens, because sometimes we assume teens are okay because they're older, but they still need us. They might not always admit it, or they might not like to admit it, but they still need us. So engaging them in stuff that that they're interested in, or looking for the things that they are interested in. So many things online now. You can do photography. There's a chef, like a chef that's helping you cook. So all these activities that you can do with them, or maybe just give them resources to, they're going to feel like, okay, my parents understand me, and they're trying to help me with this. You might be surprised what that does for your relationship with your teenager.
And Andrea, when do you think, particularly with this age range, right, the teenage years, when do you intervene if you start seeing maybe some behaviors that are of concern, and how do you do it?
Well, there are behaviors that are concerning, like self-harming behaviors, or if they are um, saying things that are close to like suicidal ideation, or maybe having a lot of panic attacks. So there are so many resources out, so many therapists that are, like, I know it sounds weird, and I guess I noticed that when I was listening to a nurse talk about how this is the job that she wanted, but it's still hard, but this is the job that she wanted. So she would have never picked another job. So for therapists, it's the same thing. We want to help people. We want to help kids. We want to help teenagers. So we are here for families and kids that need our support. I mean, it's almost like we feel weird, like not being able to help. We see all this stuff and like, I wish we could do this. I wish we could do that. So there's so many people available for support.
That's great. Speaking of screen time, and you brought it up a little bit, but in terms of younger kids, maybe elementary school age kids, for example, there's a question. My family has gone from no screen time to my daughter having her own laptop. How can we balance this new dynamic?
Yes, and that's the same thing that happens to my son. He's used to like Friday night movies, a night, and now he's getting a movie like every day. But first we have to acknowledge the reason why we might have limited screen time was for a whole different reason, right? Because it was taking time away from the things that they needed to do or time with the family. But we're home with them. We have to do so many things. We have to work. We have to do our housework on our own for some of us who had help, and now we have to do that on our own. So be forgiving and flexible with it, and be intentional with it. So if everybody's having dinner, well, maybe this is not a time to be on screens. This is still a time where you can connect. But if everybody has to do their own thing, or mom and dad are working, then if your child is going to be safe and entertained for the hour or 2 hours that you need them to be, then that's what it's gonna have to be. I mean, as much, and later we'll figure it out. We can't jump ahead and say, okay, now they're gonna be addicted or anything like that. Because if you think about it, I mean, even for teenagers, and with my clients, I'm noticing these are the kids who wanted to be on screens all the time. And what are they missing? They're missing their friends. They want to go out, they want to hang out. So we're like, in a way, preparing them for, or maybe teaching them how important that human connection is, that I honestly don't think it's going to be as difficult as some of us are thinking, to transition them away from the screens. I think they're going to be like, oh, I'm so over this. Like, I just want to go and hang out and play outside, and be able to hug my friends, or whatever that's going to look like.
That's encouraging. Yeah. Okay. One last question is, how do we break bad news during these weird days? And I think I know you spoke a little bit about death, but there's like so many other things happening, like, cancellations, permanent school closures in some cases, and things like that. So how do you go around breaking that type of news to kids? What are some tips that we could use?
I think we first need to process it ourselves. I know when I heard homeschooling, I was like, oh no, no. So you have to process that yourself, kind of be okay with that if you need to go and scream or whatever because of it. Then once you're calm, then you can break the news. Depending on their age, you want to keep it short and sweet, something like, it's not safe yet, so this is going to be canceled. But maybe you want to add in something that is positive. Oh, but in the news there was a really old grandma or grandpa, I think it was, that beat the coronavirus. Yay! Kind of like offset it as much as you can, and that's good for us as adults too. Because I mean, the one thing we have to always remember is we really need to disconnect from that bad news, and then look for some positive stories. And we have, again, these are hard times. We're going to get a lot of bad news, but we also can look for a silver lining in something to give us hope.
Yeah, definitely. That is great advice.
Yeah, and I think we are reaching the end of the conversation. Do we have any other audience questions, or that was the last one?
That was the last
one. So this has been so helpful, Andrea. We really enjoyed speaking with you, and we really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us and with our audience. You can follow Andrea on Instagram at Andrea Vargas LMHC, or visit her website at andreavargaslmhc.com. And is there another way for people to get in touch with you, Andrea?
I also have a Facebook page, and again, I didn't get very creative with that, so it's Andrea Vargas LMHC. So you'll enter that, you'll find my social media, my website. You can call the office or email me. Again, not very creative. Andrea at Andrea Vargas LMHC.
And you mentioned that you are doing teletherapy and okay.
Yes.
That's
there's a really cool video that I kind of had to put together, because I know at first it was very hard for parents to wrap their head around, okay, how's that going to look like online? But I was inspired by my daughter's preschool that was doing distant learning, and the kids were pretty engaged, and I'm like, I can do that for sure. I had to wrap my head around it, and I've been doing it, and it's great. I mean, kids nowadays are way more comfortable with technology than we are, you know, so sometimes for them it's easier, you know, than we think.
Well, it's getting easier by the day, I think. They're getting used to it, yeah. And so our next chat will be on Saturday, May 2nd, with Natalia Gaviria, and it's going to talk about soft skills and emotional development. The next one after that is May 16 with Maria Chaparro to talk about nutrition and how to involve kids in the kitchen. Fun. I love that. You can follow us at veoleo.co and at Entre Dos Podcasts for updates. And thank you so much for tuning in and spending this time with us in this space today. We are so grateful. And for sending out your questions. We hoped it helped. We hope you found it useful. And we hope you have a beautiful weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.